Korean history has been a desperate struggle for survival for thousands of years. I'm gonna tell you the whole story from the very beginning, but this isn't just gonna be about Korea. The history of a nation can never be explained in isolation of its neighboring countries. And East Asia is vast. You only see few countries in modern East Asia, but this region was once home to countless states and diverse ethnicities. But they are gone. So many of those groups were assimilated, absorbed, or annexed mostly by this country. Yet somehow, Korea was not. So my focus will be on how Korea survived and maintained its identity until now. But there is one thing you need to do first: erase the modern map from your mind. Borders are never static, and Korea wasn't limited to the Korean peninsula. This is the Liaohe River, located in present-day northeast China. The area to the west of this river is called Liaoxi, which means the west of Liaohe, and the east is Liaodong. This region is really important to understand the ancient Korean history. Around 6000 BC, people here were already growing millet, Liaohe civilization. And around 4 to 3000 BC, this civilization reached its peak with Hongshan culture. Massive religious ritual complexes, burial grounds, jade ornaments, and many other things were excavated. It was an independent civilization, distinct from the Yellow River civilization by the Huaxia people, the ancestors of the Han Chinese. But this brilliant culture began to decline around 3000 BC due to climate change. The land became dry, making farming nearly impossible. So the people had to make decisions. Some people adapted by herding sheep, becoming nomadic tribes. Some migrated south into the central plains of China and blended in with the people there. Others moved to Liaodong or even further east. Considering the vast time gap, it is difficult to claim the Hongshan people as the direct ancestors of any specific Northeast Asian ethnic group. However, their culture clearly influenced the growth of various groups in this region. Time passes and it's 2000 BC. Bronze weapons and tools begin to spread from Central Asia through the steppe route. By around 1000 BC, they've reached the Liaohe River. From the 700s BC, the Bronze Age culture flourishes in the Liaoxi region with these very unique lute-shaped bronze daggers. Then who made these unique daggers? According to the old Chinese records, a group known as the Shanrong was very active in Liaoxi and exerting pressure on the states of Yan and Qi in China at this time. The Shanrong are the proto-Mongol and Tungusic nomads before the divergence between them. So this culture is presumed to be theirs. These daggers spread to Liaodong and further, and here the daggers are commonly excavated alongside table-type dolmens and certain styles pottery. So Liaodong becomes also a distinct culture sphere from Liaoxi. Now we're getting close. Chinese records show this region as well, stating that the Ye and Yemaek tribes live to the east of the Shanrong. So we can infer that this cultural area is inhabited by the Yemaek people, and this Yemaek established various ancient states across the present-day northern Korean peninsula and Manchuria and become one of the direct ancestral ethnic groups of modern Koreans. So historical records and physical evidence both point to the same place. At least between 1000 BC and 700 BC, the first political entity in Korean history begins to grow its power right here. The first state of Korean history makes its first appearance in Chinese historical records in the 600s BC as the name of Joseon. There is this conversation between Duke Hwan of the state of Qi and his prime minister. In this record, the prime minister mentions the patterned furs of like tigers and leopards from Joseon as one of the 7 treasures of the world. This area was primary habitat for these big cats. Through the trade of these luxury goods, Joseon accumulates vast wealth and adopts advanced civilization from China. So at least 600 BC, Joseon has grown as a powerful political entity, recognized as a major trading partner by Chinese states. Fast forward to the 300s BC, China is in the Warring States period. The state of Yan is competing with Qi to the south and always wary of Joseon at its rear. Yan dispatches General Qin Kai, and he seized the lands of Liaodong and pushes Joseon into the current Korean peninsula Peninsula. After the defeat and losing Liaodong, Joseon has to move its center to Wanggeom, which is current Pyongyang. This war between the Yan and Joseon is the first recorded major conflict between China and Korea. Taking advantage of Joseon's weakening, the confederations of Jimbon and Imdun broke away from Joseon's influence, and soon a major event happens in China, and this event has a significant impact on Korean history. To understand Korea better, we frequently need to look at China as well, and this is one of the most important events in East Asian history, so let's take a quick look before we move on. From 770 BC, numerous Chinese states have risen and fallen, constantly fighting for hegemony. But in 221 BC, the king of Qin, named Yingzheng, unifies the whole China for the first time in history at the age of 39. And he literally declares himself the first emperor who stands above kings. King Bu of Joseon formally submits to the Qin dynasty to avoid any conflicts as it grows too powerful. Just for the record, King Bu is the first king whose name is officially recorded in Korean history. The first emperor rules with the strict laws and initiates massive construction projects, including his tomb, a grand palace, and connecting the walls in the north. This wall is built to keep out the fierce northern nomads, the Xiongnu, rising from the Mongolian plateau. However, even the emperor who seems to possess everything cannot escape death. While touring the empire he created, he dies in 210 BC at the age of 49. As soon as he dies, the people rebel. Two rebel generals, Liu Bang and Xiangwu, eventually enter the Qin capital. It falls to Liu Bang first, and it's burned by Xiangwu later, bringing the Qin dynasty to an end just 15 years after unification. At this moment, Xiangwu is the strongest person in China, but he doesn't have a grand vision. He redivides China again and appoints multiple kings to their realms. And Xiangwu views Liu Bang as his biggest threat, so he appoints Liu Bang as the king of Han because he sends him to Hanzhong, where the Han River flows, and surrounded by huge rugged mountains. This is Xiangwu's move to isolate Liu Bang in a remote region deep within the mountains. After doing all of this, Xiangwu declares himself the hegemon king of Western Chu and returns to his ancestral lands in Chu. But Xiangwu underestimated Liu Bang's ambition. Liu Bang breaks out of Hanzhong after only 4 months. He takes down many kings and finally kills Xiangwu, reunites the entire country, and founds the Han Empire in 202 BC. A commoner turned rebel general finally becomes the emperor of China. Liu Bang's Han Dynasty endures for 400 years, achieving the true unification of China that the Qin never could. This is why they are called the Han Chinese. However, apart from all of these meaningful historical events, the commoners can no longer endure the continuous wars and forced labor. Numerous Chinese people flee to Joseon, so King Jun, a son of King Bu, allows them to settle in the northwestern part of the territories. And this is a very good decision for growing Joseon's power, but it changes history and his personal life. In 195 BC, King Jun allows a man named Weman from the former state of Yan to settle in Joseon with 1,000 followers, and he sends Weman to guard the northwestern borders. However, Weman had other plans. He revolts, drives King Jun to the south, and becomes king himself. Although Weman sees the country, he does not change the name of the state and maintains its national identity. Because of this, there are different opinions on whether he is Chinese or a Chinese of Joseon descent, but no matter what, he decides to live as a man of Joseon. In a Korean history book compiled in the 1200s, this period is called Weman Joseon, and the preceding era Gojoseon, which means Old Joseon, to distinguish between them. Today, modern Koreans call both eras Gojoseon, but I'll refer to it as Joseon in this video. After losing his kingdom, King Jun flees south. At this time, the southern part of the Korean peninsula is referred to as Jin. Jin is a collective term for various tribes tribes and small polities rather than a unified state. But King Jun takes over certain areas of this region and declares himself the king of Han. As his influence grows here, the region comes to be known as Han. To be clear, this Han is different from the Han of China. Meanwhile, up in the Songhwa River basin, Puya is already emerging as the second proper state in Korean history. Along the Amlok River, a new entity, Goguryeo, is starting to take shape. The primary ethnic group of these northern nations is the Yemaek, as we saw. The Yemaek in the north and the Han in the south integrated over time under the name of the Han, becoming the direct ancestors of modern Koreans. And this is the ethnic origin of the Korean identity. Coming back to Joseon, ironically, it finds stability and grows even more powerful after Weman usurps the throne. King Weman strikes a deal with the Han Dynasty. He promises to prevent neighboring entities from invading the Han borders and also not to block these smaller neighbors from trading directly with the Han. In exchange for these promises, Joseon receives abundant material support from the Han. With this support, Joseon gets stronger and subjugates small states like Jimbon and Imdum. Eventually, Joseon seized total control in this region, emerging as the supreme hegemon of the East. King Ugo, the grandson of King Weman, ascends the throne. He bolsters Joseon's national strength and wealth by accepting numerous migrants from the Han Dynasty and controlling trades. At this time, the Han is occupied with checking the Seongnu, but the Han has always been wary of Joseon and doesn't want it to get stronger. So the Han tries to expand its influence by accepting defectors from Joseon, and naturally, tensions just keep rising. At some point, King Ugo cuts off all diplomatic relations with the Han and blocks every trade and interchange between the Han and various states. Moreover, King Ugo escalates tensions even more by showing signs of forming an alliance with the Seongnu. So Emperor Wu, the 7th emperor of the Han, launches a massive conquest against the Seongnu over a decade from 129 BC and finally drives them beyond the Gobi Desert. And next, he conquers Nanwue and Minwue in a row and finally turns his sights toward the east. He sends an envoy first to persuade King Ugo. However, King Ugo refuses to back down and denies the Han Empire's hegemony. But then, something unexpected happens. Emperor Wu is notorious for the frequent execution of his own officials, so the envoy is too afraid to return empty-handed. He's terrified that the emperor will execute him as well. So on the way back, he kills the Joseon's general Zhang, who was escorting him. Emperor Wu rewards the envoy with the high-ranking position. King Ugo is absolutely outraged. He crosses the border, attacks the fortress where the envoy is hiding, and kills him. And just like that, the Han Empire gets the perfect excuse to start a war. In 109 BC, the Han Empire invades Joseon. 7,000 naval forces cross the sea, while 50,000 ground troops advance by land. But Joseon successfully repels them several times, so the Han sends an envoy named Wei Shan to persuade King Ugo once again. And this time, it works. King Ugo decides to send the crown prince to the Han court to restore the relationship. The prince departs with 10,000 men and tries to cross the border. And here's the problem. The envoy looks at the prince's massive escort and gets nervous. They are armed. It's too many soldiers to let in, so he demands the prince disarm his men and himself as well before crossing. So now the prince thinks this is a trap. He's convinced that if he disarms, he'll be in danger. So instead of complying, he turns around and heads back home. And guess what? Emperor Wu executes this empty-handed envoy and continues the war. The Han Empire eventually manages to besiege the capital. As the siege lasts for a year, internal strife erupts. Vainly enough, King Ugo is assassinated by his own officials who favor surrender. But the resistance doesn't end there. A loyal minister named Seonggi refuses to give in and continues to defend the city. But in a final act of betrayal, King Ugo's own son kills Seonggi, leading to the ultimate fall of the capital. So in 108 BC, Joseon falls to the Han Empire, and the Han establishes the 4 commanderies to directly rule the former territories of Joseon. Goguryeo is incorporated into Hyundu Commandery as Goguryeo County since it has been under Joseon's influence. So Joseon wrote the opening chapter of Korean history and disappeared in this way. Its territory fell to the Chinese dynasty, but the cultural and spiritual identity established by the Yemaek people was so deep-rooted that they refused to be tamed by Chinese civilization. And this shared national experience by Joseon became the foundation for new states to rise. So the protagonist of the next era of Korean history begins to emerge. In fact, they've been already here.